All right, we have started. This
All right.
this is the Reading Instruction Show. I'm your host, as always, Dr. Andy Johnson, and today I have a very, very special guest, Ronda Schlumbohm. Did I get that?
You did. Thank you.
And she is a real life teacher, not a fake one, from Alaska. So, Rhonda, you were telling me today's your first day back.
First day back. This is my 33rd year in education, my 26th at the school that I'm at.
In what grade are you teaching?
Second and third combination.
Okay.
So I have about 10 second graders and about 12 third graders.
Oh my. So when you're reading, how do you differentiate when you have such a wide variety?
Well, that's partly why I got a master's in reading in 2003. But I think actually reading and writing is easier to differentiate than math. And so actually we have a hard time teaching math because the levels are so specific, but reading, because teachers are used to having levels, kids coming in low and high and middle. To me, it's easier to combine them and then meet kids where they're at by grouping. Lots of whole class instruction. I like to use making words for teaching phonics because it'll hit those lower skills in the beginning of the lesson for those kids that are still learning like consonant, vowel, consonants. And then it hits the higher kids at the end, and it's in it. And because the lower kids are participating, it kind of brings them up.
Okay. Do you use a basal in your teaching, or do you use a workshop? What do you use?
Workshop. I have not used a basal in probably 20 years. However, today I just got new materials that are being mandated by the state of Alaska, and by golly, it's a basal. So I'm not sure how I'm going to navigate that because I can't see that I would teach in that way. So I'm a little bit apprehensive. Tomorrow's our training.
I can't imagine. Now, I'm old enough to remember the old days with basals in high, middle, and low group. And you're sitting at the kidney-shaped table, working with the group, and the others are in their seats doing seat work.
Yeah, there seems to be like workbooks to go through, and that would be super boring. My whole, workshop teaches with authentic texts. So, I mean, for years and years, we have created in our school a book room that has multi-leveled books, and I know, thematically or through science, pull things, fiction, nonfiction. And so over the years, I've just figured out how to put levels together for what I'm teaching in the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, at the end of the year. And it kind of works. Kids are engaged, they love it. Yeah.
Imagine that, they're enjoying themselves.
Yeah, they love teaching, they love writing. Most kids love writing.
Yep. When they can share their ideas, I'm guessing.
Yeah, totally.
What do they write about?
Oh my gosh. So at the beginning of the year, I like to use a lot of personal narratives, right? Because it's a good thing to do to get to know your new students. Actually, I do follow Lucy Calkins just because we adopted it as a school a few years ago. However, we've been told we can't use it anymore, but I'm still probably going to use parts of it because she's put together some nice outlines, and I differentiate and I go off of it. I don't really follow it to the letter because I'm teaching, so it needs to come from me. And I like to use a lot of Ralph Fletcher books. Oh my gosh, his Marshfield Dreams, stories when I was a kid, or stories when I was a boy, stories when I was a kid, I think. I use that all the time in the fall for personal narratives because he is writing from his childhood, and kids get a kick out of hearing those little short stories. Then they can think, oh, I can write about losing a tooth and my grandma buried it in the garden, so.
Cool. Now, do you have the same kids in second and third for 2 years then?
Not I have the third graders. So I had my third graders this year. I had a second grader. So
Yep.
half my class is new to is old to me and half is new. And
That's what I was,
so yeah. So you loop with them or whatever. But you know what? It is so amazing to have half your class trained. You
yes.
start the year running. You don't have to spend that much time on management. You know, the kids know the drill. They know how to use their book boxes. You can have those kids train the other kids. It's super, super nice.
And it's that Vygotsky thing you learn by interacting with other people
Yep,
at higher and
it's
higher levels.
exactly right.
So who
Mhm.
told you you couldn't use Lucy Calkins?
Well, Emily Hanford evidently came to Alaska and in the spring of this last year, and lots of people went down to Anchorage to see her. I did not go, and they came back saying that, you know, Lucy Calkins is bad, and
Emily Hanford
so
is good. Is that right?
yeah, evidently she's a journalist and knows everything about reading instruction.
Now, how many reading classes has Emily Hanford taught?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But I've taught hundreds of kids how to read.
What was the reason why you were told not to use Lucy Calkins?
Um, just that she's bad. That's it.
I'm sorry. Oh, she's bad. Okay. Bad. Bad in a moral sense or in an
I
instruction?
don't know. You know, a lot of people complain about her, but I don't I've seen her do some beautiful things like creating Saturday classes online for free. And you know, as a teacher in Alaska, yeah, I mean, it's cost so much to travel. I
Yep.
love that she creates things that are free and they're beautiful. And I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and listen to it and learn something new.
Oh my. And everything you adopt and adapt. I mean, it would be malpractice if you took something and did it exactly.
Right. Yep.
I think you
I
alluded to it.
agree.
You're teaching your kids, not a program or curriculum.
Exactly.
Tell me
Yep.
about this
You have
book
to,
room.
I think,
Go ahead.
tell you about I'm
No, I
sorry,
interrupt.
tell you about the what?
The book room. Is that a library? Is that something in your class?
No, well, I have a huge library because I've spent thousands of dollars on books over the years and you know, try to keep buying new, especially nonfiction. Nonfiction in second and third grade is where it's at.
Yep.
Those kids, you know, really love those things. So and trying to reach my boys to make sure I, you know, have enough for them, and lots of graphic novels now. But the book room was started even before I came to my elementary school, Salcha Elementary, and it we just had a cabinet at first with the second and third grade. I took her position after she retired. I was the K1 teacher then, and we had, you know, just all these books that we collected sets of, and then we would teach from there, and we would just pull out the books, and we didn't even check them out because it's just we only have back then there was only 4 teachers K-6. Now we have 3 teachers K-5. So it's a very small school. But over the years, if there was ever any extra money, or if our school district in, you know, 15 years ago was pretty progressive, and if you didn't want to use the basil, or if there was extra supplemental money, they would give it to you and you could purchase book sets or, you know, things that you felt you needed. And so we have a really good book room, I think. And you know, like we even have sets of Mercy Watson, Kate DeCamillo's, you know, so that's a fairly newer series. And lots of nonfiction as well. Kindergarten through 6th grade.
Yep.
So
Alexa off. Sorry.
it's okay.
Amazing what can happen if you allow teachers to make choices.
And yeah, I mean, my motivation goes up right when I'm in control, and kids' motivation goes up too when they are in control.
Now think about, well, I like what you said about nonfiction.
Mhm.
I was surprised. Tell me more about that. How many younger children prefer nonfiction?
Uh, I don't know, like, I've never done a survey necessarily. I just know that through teaching them, kids love nonfiction. And this is the age to grab them, I feel, as a second and third grade teacher. Just knowing 8 and 9-year-olds, they want to know about the world. They are curious. It's all, all the facts that they can get about any kind of animal that they're interested in, or any kind of country, anything. So and I love that too. As a teacher and a farmer,
Yep.
I'm all about nonfiction. So and I like teaching them about, I feel like it's my obligation to teach them about the trees in the boreal forest because we are in it. I want them to understand about bird migrations and systems and salmon and things that are in our environment. So that's my job, is to turn them on to where we live.
You sound like a magic teacher.
Well, I love it.
You can tell that. And that's what builds the basis for the reading expository text later on,
Mhm.
having that basis. Well, what brings you joy in teaching?
The kids, totally the kids. Every day I greet them at the door, and then we have a morning meeting. And something that I've been doing for quite a few years now is reading lots. I've always read to them a lot, so I usually read a picture book first thing in the morning, and then sometime during the day, depending on our schedule, I do a read aloud. And I used to read, and they would just listen or they would draw. And then a few years ago, I just thought, gosh, if they could just track, I think it'll really help them with their eye movement and their, strengthening their eyes. And then you just never know, like, it might just make them really take off. And I really think that's true. So I just try to have them track as they go as best they can. There are a few kids that their attention spans are not very good, and I usually have them come close to my rocking chair. But I have them open their books, of their chapter books, and I'm talking, Charlotte's Web and the BFG and um any Kate DeCamillo book that I can get my hands on. So like The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. So and they turn on to reading like nobody's business. And I usually have a camera around my neck when I'm at school, so that I can just like do it one-handed, and then I put it in my newsletter. And because I'll be sitting there reading and they're tracking. And I don't know if you've ever experienced a classroom of children just stuck into a book
Yep.
and then I don't know how to explain it. If you haven't ever been in a classroom, it's just this magical thing where they're all in it. And then you'll come to a part where, it's exciting or sad or something. And there's just a collective, like, presence, I guess, of all the children. And sometimes we'll just stop. And I love, love, love to do it so much because when kids like don't know a word, or there's something that they really connect to, they will ask a question like, what does that mean? And I tell them, I don't know every word, you have to stop me and tell me what you need to know, and then I will explain it. Or we're a community, we'll help each other. And so, oh my gosh, the discussions that second and third graders can have about the world and kindness, and character development, it's just truly a gift to be able to be present when they are making all these connections. So I really wish people everywhere could be in a room when that happens.
Sounds like you're having some flow experiences, some peak
Uh-huh.
experiences with children,
Mhm.
and they're fully engaged.
Yeah.
Do you have behavior problems when children are fully engaged?
No.
I wonder why
I
that is.
actually I actually don't have very many, knock on wood, behavior problems. I mean, I have, of course, we have. But I learned something really important from a mentor teacher of mine. She always said, you can't take anything out from a child until you put deposits in. And so I think about that all the time. Like, I try to make connections. The K1 teacher, I see those kids in the hall, and I'm always trying to put a good positive thing into those kids that I see coming up to me, because then I can correct them and, take a withdrawal. So that's my MO.
I'm going to steal that idea and teach it to my undergraduate students.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. So much of learning is the emotional part.
Yep. And I have a child that is possibly autistic coming up to me. And all I know is he has a fetish with cats. So I already have thought that my first read aloud that I don't have a set of is The Grand Escape, about the cat. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but I'm trying to remember the author, which I'm blanking on right now. But it's all about some cats that like sneak out in the night. And so it's a super good one for the beginning of the year, because it's very easy to comprehend. So I'm going to start the year with that.
So imagine the money being spent on the Science of Reading new curriculum. If that money could be spent instead on books, what do you think the difference would be?
Well, I think the difference would be amazing. But I also think we need to spend money on teachers and professional development. So I guess that's where I've been having a hard time lately. Like, what do you mean there's no phonics taught? I've been teaching phonics my whole curriculum, my whole time. What do you mean, we're not, I don't know. I just can't understand it. But then I think, well, maybe there are teachers that don't know these things, or maybe they just, I guess I've always been a studier. And so, and I've taught in a small school where if I don't do my job, it's totally reflected on me, because I'm the only third grade teacher. So, yeah. So I have the weight on me, and I understand that, and it's good. That's a good thing.
It's the joy of having a small school versus these big shopping mall schools.
Yeah. And there's lots of things, there's lots of practices I see happening in schools, things that are maybe not research-based at all. So I don't know if you're familiar with Walk to Read, but there's I don't know, my district is all over it. And I don't really know exactly how it's being used, because in bigger schools, and maybe that's a solution in bigger schools, if they're having success in it, then fine. But in our little school, I have second graders and third graders. I have, some of them are probably first grade readers, kindergarten readers, up to fifth grade readers.
Yep.
So that's a beautiful thing, actually.
Oh,
because I think that those sometimes those less mature readers have the most insight, or different way of thinking, and they bring it out while I'm doing a read aloud. So
a reading disability doesn't mean a thinking disability.
Yeah.
Or an imagining disability.
Yeah.
Or an emotional disability. They're still connecting. Can you remember back to when you started teaching, what that first year was like for you?
So I was teaching in Texas then. And my first year teaching, it was awful. I taught in a school, Shenandoah Elementary, and there were 8 teachers, 6 to 8 teachers per grade level. It was a huge elementary school. And I had the most beautiful second grade class. I student taught in first grade, but then I got this second grade position in Texas. So, but then right after Labor Day, the weekend of Labor Day, the school district decided to put me into 4th grade because they had an influx of 4th graders. And so over the 3-day weekend, I had to switch my classroom out for 4th grade, and, brand new teacher, and then teach 4th grade. And so all my kids went away, and I got all these new kids. And how they decided the principal decided they took the last enrolled from every classroom and gave me those kids. And so you can imagine those are the kids that usually have the most behavior problems because they're the parents that, just didn't do it till the last second. Not, I mean, that's what happened anyway.
Yep.
And I had kids in their fetal position. I had really abused kids. I had kids that had just came from Taiwan the weekend before and didn't speak any English. And I cried every single day.
Oh,
I
dear.
went home and my husband said, "Why do you want to be a teacher again?" And I said, "Because I love it."
Oh,
And so it was so hard. That first year was awful. But I stuck with it and stuck to my guns, and I probably learned everything I needed to know that year.
wow. We think we can create a finished teaching product in 3 semesters of undergraduate.
Mhm.
And you pointed to the importance of teacher professional development. Tell
Mhm.
me a little bit more about that, how you see that and the importance of teacher professional development.
Well, partly I think we have to find master teachers and
Yes.
put people that are beginning teachers with them, either in undergraduate school or those first couple of years of practice. And I often think about, you're not an expert at anything. That Malcolm Gladwell book, he said 10,000 hours until you're an expert at anything, which is about 8 years of teaching.
Yep.
I figured out.
Wow.
So, um, uh, so if that's true, then, you know, that takes a long time to get good at this practice. And we always say that teachers are practicing, right?
Yep.
And so think of it like a doctor is also having a practice. And I actually equate a lot of teaching with doctors because if you go to a doctor and you're prescribed something, the doctor looks at the whole person,
Hmm.
and then they prescribe medication, but if you need it, and then but people don't react the same to the same treatment.
Hmm.
So the doctor might have to do something different. I mean, there's general things that work, but sometimes they don't always work. So
And,
it's exactly true with teaching reading.
and if it's not working, they don't keep doing it.
Right. And I think that's our obligation, to switch it up. If it doesn't work, um, change something. But professional development, I belong to the International Reading Association,
Mhm.
or wait, International Literacy
Let's see.
Association now.
Yep.
It used to be reading.
Yep. Yep.
um, I'm also this year the president of my local chapter,
Okay.
but I just believe in connecting with teachers and gosh, in Alaska, 15, 20 years ago, I got to go on retreats.
Hmm.
We got to put on conferences here in Alaska. I mean, we've had Regie Routman here. We've had um, Ralph Fletcher has come to Alaska. Richard Allington has come a few times. I've gotten to hear really amazing teachers and researchers, and I've gotten to go to conferences, in Chicago and other places, and I feel like that is super important. But I also believe conferences are great. They're a great shot in the arm, and they're good to hear if you're hearing a real researcher,
Hmm.
but it's only a shot in the arm. And I think the best professional development I've ever gotten has been things that are long term. So like the National Writing Project.
Hmm.
So we had in Alaska, we had something called the Writing Consortium. And so it was based on the National Writing Project. And so teachers would go for 2 weeks to a month, sometimes like retreat style, and you would like work on writing for that whole time, and you'd be a better writer yourself so that you could be a better teacher of writing. And so I've done that. And so I think just studying it, um, uh, professional learning communities, PLCs, are
Yep.
important. Book studies are important.
Yep.
So, but it takes a lot of time, and new teachers don't come in. There's no way you could actually really be ready unless you spend about 5 years you know, following a mentor teacher probably. I think it's too hard. It's too hard of a job.
We prepare them to begin the journey.
Yeah.
And the one and done workshop, you're right, doesn't work. It's contact over time. So you have a chance to think and synthesize and talk with others and try out these new ideas. That's how professional development happens.
Yeah.
The difference between a novice and expert is the 10,000 hours, but it's also knowledge.
Right. Situations.
An experience, understanding how literacy happens, how learning occurs. Well, as you think about the science of reading and the impacts, how do you think that's going to impact your class and your ability to teach?
Well, as a master teacher, at least I think I'm a master teacher by now.
You are?
I think that I'm going to wade the waters and avoid the rocks. So I'm just gonna do what I know is right, because deep down in my core, I cannot just follow, phonics lessons for an hour. I just can't. I'm not going to do that to kids, because I know that I would be robbing them of joy. I do teach phonics, but I'm just not going to, I'm not going to do what they're telling me to do. I'm not going to follow the basal. Can't do it.
And you can still teach the skills in the basal.
Yeah, I can.
Teach it your own way.
Right. Exactly. I will look at the skills and I'll make sure that I'm doing it. And actually, I was doing that a little bit today, and I was like, oh, see, look, making words has doubling the consonant before the suffix. This you fly thing also has that. It's all the same.
You can do it. Well, what would you like parents to know about teaching reading, about how you do things?
Well, I write a newsletter every year and try to help parents understand how to read, but mostly I just want parents to help their child find joy in it and help them find books that they love to read, and set up a place for them to read at night, and just support their child wherever they are. I had a little girl that I tutored a little bit at our farm at lunchtime a couple of times this summer, and she would come down from her farm and we'd sit at my picnic table and do some reading together, and then she would help me out a little bit on the farm, and I'd give her flowers, and then she'd go home. So but finding the joy and not stressing too much if a kid is not, like, quote unquote on level. Just keep working and not giving up, and keep trying things until the child gets it.
They all learn in different ways and at different rates. What would you like my undergraduate pre-service teachers, what advice do you have for them? I'm going to show them this, by the way. This is good stuff.
Gosh.
They're wondering how they should teach reading. They're going, oh my gosh, what do I do?
Well, I think you just have to start. You have to know that all those pillars are important, but plus writing. I would say, actually, focus on writing. Focus on how to be a writing teacher, because you apply what you know about language in writing, and then you have something concrete to know where a kid is. Actually, I think about that a lot. When kids write, they can only write at their level. They can't write below it. And therefore, you're right in that zone of proximal development. You know exactly what they need. So I think teaching reading through writing is very magical, actually, because kids will connect. So like any kind of genre. So if they're, if you're reading information books, you should be writing information books in tandem, because it really cements it, and then kids really get it. And then if you're reading opinions, you should be writing opinions. So connections.
I wish you would have been my third grade teacher. My goodness,
Well,
that sounds good. Well, what else can you tell us about teaching reading? That's a very general. What's worked for you and what hasn't worked for you? What's a failure that you've made?
failure. Well, what's worked? Let me go back.
Yep, what's
I
worked?
I have okay, here's something interesting. I always think I can teach anybody to read. I just got to figure it out, right?
Yes.
So,
Okay.
so I taught a blind boy how to read.
Oh,
Truly I mean, he had no vision at all, and he
mhm,
had to learn to read Braille. He obviously had an assistant to help him,
mhm,
which happened to be my really good friend. And she would Braille all the little books. I wanted to give him the feeling of being just like all those other kids.
mhm,
But he taught me so many important things. First of all, I have like little storybox books in my classroom. He was like a second grader when I had him. And we would put Braille, see-through Braille on the pages that I still have some of these books in my room. I had charts that she would put Braille on, so that he could go up and feel and point to words,
oh,
just like the other kids. I'm not kidding you. It was just magical. And sorry, my dog. And um, she but what was so good about having this boy was that I had to explain things a lot better because he had to understand it. So I was buying um toys that were, replicas of whales, so that when I read a book about whales, he could touch it and feel what a fluke was, or, oh my gosh, that kid taught me so much. So that kid went to college, and that's all I know. Like, I don't know where he is now, but I do know he graduated and went to college.
good for
So
you.
that makes me happy. But then I've also taught kids that were autistic and didn't have much vocabulary, or even well, we didn't know.
Mhm,
Actually, we didn't know how much he understood. And so I was trying to get a handle on how much comprehension he had. So, but he couldn't tell me sentences. And so I would have him read a story that he didn't know. I was trying to benchmark him. So
mhm,
I gave him a story that he didn't know, but I had copied out pictures of the book that he just read. And then I had the aide help me, and it was like, which happened first, which happened second, and he'd find the pictures, or where's the character, and I would ask him questions, and he would understand it. So I could kind of get a handle on how much he was getting out of those books, because he couldn't say all the words that I could understand. But here's the thing. He lives in my community still. He reads Harry Potter.
oh,
He's like 20. How old is he now? 22, I think.
yep.
Um, but he reads Harry Potter, and so to me that makes me so happy, because that kid learned to read. But he learned to read with storybox books and a stack. He had to have like a lot of repetition because he couldn't focus for very long. And
Mhm.
so there was an aide with him, and they would just read the next one, and she would just have him read the next book and the next book and the next book, and they'd go through a stack, and he would do it. But if it was a long book, he couldn't do it. But those short ones, he felt accomplished, and he would. So I'm not kidding you. We had stacks of books that he would go through every day.
Wow.
I know.
Well, Rhonda, it brings me joy knowing that you're a teacher
Thank you.
and there's teachers out there. It really does. It really does. It gives me hope. And I hope you don't retire for a long, long time, because we need teachers like you in our classrooms.
Yeah.
And we
I
need,
just, yeah, I think this is my last year though, which
yeah,
makes me so sad, but maybe I'll help at the university.
yes. It makes me sad that we don't honor the wisdom, the experience, the knowledge, and expertise of magic teachers like you. And that's the sad
Mm,
part.
yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I will keep working for education though, some way. Maybe at my farm have a different reading thing. I don't know.
There you go. You could have a reading camp at your farm.
Yep.
All right. Any last words?
No, but I just appreciate that you took the time to talk to teachers like me, and um I'm always happy to help people. So if any of your students need help, just give them my email address.
We'll take you up on that. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Okay.
Rhonda
Thank you.
Schonblum.
Bloom bomb.
Bloomball.
Yeah.
You bet.